Hey guys, welcome to Lab. On today's episode, we'll be talking about how to navigate through post-secondary. My name's Nicolette.
And I'm Omar.
Kalisha.
Charles.
I'm Candace.
And in our navigation, let's start off with, how do you handle a challenging first year? Like when you get into, I think we've all gotten into our post-secondary institution, whether it be college or university or a trade program, and we've gotten those first marks and we're like, whoa, I don't really belong here. So how have any of you handled it? Kalisha?
My first year?
Yeah, how did you feel about it? How was your first year?
My first year is actually pretty good because I kind of read up on what I was doing because I was that fascinated in stuff I was doing, which is accounting. And it went good. The second year, though, was challenging just because how competitive it is with everybody from different countries. Everyone has different levels. So I had a hard time with that, doing that for a while.
And how did you it was a challenge, but what were some of the things you did to handle the challenges? Like, I'm pretty sure you had a challenge that, a latter year, you knew what to do.
Priority.
Because you were priority. Okay. So how did you prioritize?
At one point, I had to be like, okay, there are certain things that can wait, and there are certain things that just have to be done. And I know myself to be a procrastinator, which is not the best, especially in accounting. So, for instance, I always like to hang out with my friends.
Oh, okay.
And on weekends. So I always say, okay, you know what? On weekends, I'll hang out with them. But it came to a point where weekends wasn't an option. There are certain tests I would have on the Saturday.
Oh.
And I thought I would have enough time. So I've had to learn to isolate myself from some people, or from a lot of people for that fact. And it was hard because you feel so, you don't feel like you're in the world anymore. It's just books, school, home. Books, school, home. And it got crazy for me. But at the end, I graduated, right? And I got to the place where I wanted to be. So it kind of worked out in my favor, but at the same time, I didn't like the place I was in just to get where I wanted to go.
Right.
So, yeah.
So sometimes you got to be uncomfortable to go forward, right?
Exactly.
So I hear that. How about you, Nicolette? How was how did you handle challenges in your academic experience?
Well, I had challenges in my first year and my second year. My first year, I was near the edge of failing. There was about 7 of us who all practiced we're studying for one course that we desperately needed to pass. Some bought Adderall to study, and I was it was hard. That semester I prayed more than I studied. Honestly, and I don't know how, but I got through. And all those who took Adderall, they didn't pass, but I passed. So I was like, glory to God for that. But that was a moment where I was like, okay, well, I need to trust God with this because He got me into the program. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm in. I'll figure out the rest. But He had to continually be there for me. And then when I hit another bump, when I did fail another class, that hurt. I was like, maybe this is not for me. But God told me He'll get me through. So that little bump, not to be discouraged, just keep going and look at now I'm done. So yeah.
What's up? So I will say for me, in my first year, I was doing history and economics, and let's just say I thought it was tough stuff. So in my first year, I took 2 second-year courses because I thought I was that guy, but I wasn't. Those were D and D plus respectively, and I got placed on academic probation in my first semester. And that was really hard because I called back home. I told my mom, I'm like, oh, I don't really belong here. I'm wasting, and tuition was so much money. Oh my goodness. And I went away to school. So that was $17,000, wasting my parents' money for an undergraduate degree that people are paying $4,000 for the year. And I felt broken. But basically what I did was I was real with myself and I said, okay, what are the things that I can work on right now? I may not get the material fully, but what can I work on right now in terms of how I'm studying, in terms of my strategies? Am I giving it my best effort? And just like you said, prioritizing, So because I noticed that because I was living away from home and I felt lonely in a certain respect, I was playing a lot of video games, to cope with the loneliness. Or I'd be going out to hang out with friends from school because I just wanted to compensate for how I felt being distant from home. But I realized, if I developed a routine, so I remember I'd wake up, go to the breakfast spot, get oats, watch my Moesha that came in at 8 a.m., and then I would get right to work and then start with my classwork and then go to classes. And if I kept that routine going, there would be some system in place that would help me be more successful. And it ended up helping me out. Like I got my grades up to a point where I was able to transfer back home, and then, just each semester I just kept improving to getting to a straight A student from third year and beyond. So I would just say that we whenever you are starting school, don't look at the starting point as the defining indicator of the fulfillment of your vision, right? Like, you can't look at how you start something and say that's definitely how you're gonna finish it. People start in the hood, but then they end up on Wall Street, right? So it's the reality is that, when you're getting into your profession or when you're starting a undergraduate degree or whatever you're doing, whether it be a college program or whatever, you have to look at it as a visionary and say, when I open up what I'm going to get at the end of the 3-year, 2-year, whatever the year the program is, that is my goal and that's what I'm going to achieve. However that process is accomplished, it's only through the will of God that I will be able to overcome those challenges. And he, just like you mentioned, Nicolette, that began a good work in you is more than faithful to see it through. So that's not everyone's story. Like Omar's story is different, and I believe Omar, what was your experience like?
My first year was rough. I'd say it kind of started like yours. Lots of struggles. Not knowing how to prioritize. Also, I think just expecting that you'd get the same results you got in high school.
Right.
So I did have a lot of success in high school, got to university, wasn't having the same success and didn't get why. Couldn't figure out why. And stayed up to study all night, did the things that I thought I could do, prayed, prayed, tried to do the things that I was supposed to do to try to get the grades I wanted to, and really just struggled by. But I was like, you know what, next year. Because in the program that I was in pre-med, I was thinking, okay, your first year you can kind of, just get by, but you maybe will be able to like regain and recoup for the next year. So I know that summer was kind of like, at least I got through, but you know what, next year we're gonna get it. And I had a lot of the same experiences in the second year, just staying up, studying, praying, and another tough year. And I feel like third year got back into the same things, and I was like, yo, med's not happening because you need to have great grades. And I was like, I can scrape by and finish this degree. I could. But I was like, that's not where my heart was. My heart was to go to med, so I'm like, if I finish this degree, what do I do? Maybe I can work in a lab. Like, yeah, but that wasn't my passion. That wasn't my passion to work in a lab. I'm like, yeah, maybe I can find a job doing this. Maybe I can branch off into teaching. Maybe I can do a whole bunch of things. And it just became this huge maybe. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this.
Right.
And I came to some crossroads in my life with some other things like relationships. I had a girlfriend at the time and that was a huge mess. I had moved out of my parents' house at the time too. And it just became this big, huge mess in my life. And I just needed some time to just pause.
Yeah.
And I took that time, and I took that time to pray. And I took that time to really seek God, and I decided to leave school. So that was the reality of my situation. I think how I could have avoided a lot of that is before you get into anything, know where God's leading you. Right? The Bible says that in all your ways acknowledge Him and you'll direct your paths. Don't just do something for doing something's sake. Don't just do something because you think you're great at it. Don't just do something because people are telling you that's the way to go. But if you seek God first and you get that confirmation that, hey, this is where you're supposed to be, it's a lot easier when you're struggling to look back and say, God, you've got my back because I know you led me here.
Right.
Right?
So on that point, like when you experience challenges and like you experience like failures and stuff, is it always indicative of saying like where God's saying, hey, this isn't for you?
No. Like I was saying, if you know God's will for your life with certain things, then when you come up on a challenge, you have a lot more back. Like, for instance, I'm married, right? And I knew during my like process of finding my wife, when I heard from God, like, this is the girl, that there are certain things that came up after that didn't shake me.
Right.
She moved provinces and provinces and provinces away during our friendship, and there was a point in time where just like lost connection with her because she was like, I'm moving away, I don't know if we'll be able to actually make it down that route. And I never talked to anybody else during that time period. I never sought anybody else during that time period.
You talk to me.
I talked to you, obviously, and you know the story. You know the story. But the funny thing is, when you asked me, you said, Omar, would you wait for her? I said, I even wait 2 years before I hear from her again, because I knew what God had told me.
Right.
So even though there was a disconnect, even though some people would be like, wow, man, that died, because I had heard from God, it was easy to wait. I'm personally the type of person that says, because David was anointed as king, he didn't have to move from Saul's spear when it was thrown. Because if God already said, you're going to be king,
Right.
then what changes that circumstantially? So if God says, I'm giving you the go-ahead to be a nurse, I'm giving you the go-ahead to be a teacher, I'm giving you the go-ahead to
Accounting.
do accounting, then when you start to get into trouble, it's not that you're going to say, I'm not going to study. It's not that you're going to say, like, you're not going to be that boastful, but you're a lot more comfortable to say, hey, God brought me here.
Right.
But when you pick up something of your own, and then you decide, oh, I'm going to go here, and then you start to fail, you're like, this was my will. I don't really know, you know?
Right.
You have to hear from God. It's very important.
I agree. And that's why, you know, the Bible talks about without vision people perish. You know, because it's easier to rely on something that is not of your own intellect, you know, but but when you rely on something that's from God, then you have the more veracity to keep on going. And that's what's up. So I know some of us here, you know, beyond post-secondary, but also postgraduate studies, you know, we have Candace's experience, you know, and
Yeah. So I guess going into my first year, I felt like I was still kind of a high school student because, you know, in high school I could like barely study, I could do like the sports teams, I could work like however many hours a week and juggle all this and still come out with like A's and B's. So I thought I could pull the same thing off in university.
what sports you play?
I did soccer and basketball.
Oh, you play ball?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. That's good.
And then I realized quickly that that wasn't the case. And then it hit me hard because I also went to a non-semester school, so it's like if I mess up in September, I have till June, because like you do like all your classes at the same time for the whole year. But whereas first year, it's like the end of September comes and like you're almost done pretty much. So it's like you don't have that time to catch up and pull yourself together. And I didn't really click for me right away. And so December came and I was like, oh, this is it. Like I did not do as well as I thought I would do. And so like again, like Omar was kind of like, okay, well, I'll get it together next year kind of thing. And like I did do a little better, but then I kind of like pretty much in the end, like I didn't graduate in the program that I wanted to because I just couldn't pull it together because I'm a procrastinator. And I just didn't have those study habits. But I think what my ultimate downfall was that I didn't put God first in my post-secondary education. Like I didn't like pray to see, oh, is this the right school for me? Is this the right program for me? I kind of just went because I'm like, oh, I'd like to do this. This is available. Let's just do it. So it was almost like I was thinking like, oh, I don't need to like double check with God because like it just makes sense. So I think that was my ultimate downfall.
Pause right there. I don't need to double check with God because it makes sense. I want to know, like, where do you find that line between I am a man or a woman that is growing up and I need to find a job, so I need to find a career, versus, and something has to be done. Like I can't just be sitting and being idle, versus I'm seeking God to give me an answer as to where I should go. Because I think it's easier in hindsight to say, after those experiences, to say, you know, I never really checked in with God that much. But then it's harder to speak to the high school student that doesn't want to be lazy and just sit on his behind or they're behind, and wants to find a career to do, like, you know, to just, you know, to materialize their labor per se. And how do you find that balance? Like, you know
You know what I think is deep is, and I think it's I don't think it's completely lost, but it's not explored as much, is when did Mary know who Jesus was? When did Samuel's mother know who Samuel was? When did Samson's mother know who Samson was? When did Josiah's parents know who he was? Is like, we have this thing in our church history, when you look in the Bible, where parents knew who their children's name was, they knew who their child's gift was, they knew who their child's calling was and what they were called to do before God, before the kid was even born. And we're out here throwing like celebrations, gender reveals, all these beautiful things. But are we really investing that time to say, Charles, before you even were born, I knew you were going to be a lawyer. Before you were even born, I knew this would be your gift in God. And I think that we've become a little lackadaisical with a lot of our approach to God in a lot of things. And it's just grow up, go to school, and get a good job, and that's okay. Is we haven't invested that much time. And so it's easy for me to be going through high school, and it's never really been an issue, because all I had to do was get good grades. And you get to the next level, and of course you apply, and you just keep on getting good grades, and you just keep on going through the motions. But no one really ever took the time to sit me down and say, Omar, this is who you are. Right? When you grow up with that notion of, I know who I am and I know where I'm going, you're just so much more direct. And like I'm saying, when you know the call of God for your life, it's so much easier to say, I'm going in on this 100% because I have God backing me up. Whereas you do get older, and there is that question where it's like, do I do this? Do I want to do that? And you haven't really completely asked God, because no one has ever really instilled that in you.
Right.
It's never been that important. It's always just been go with the flow, because we've seen that prior to us.
Right.
But when that's instilled from you, when you've had that, this was your name, this was your call, this is all that stuff's been invested in you, it's not so much of an issue.
I'm out here giving you guys my gifts of friends. You know, you guys don't deserve these things. I agree with what you're saying. I wonder if also a lot of it has to do with our culture, kind of that work, not even culture, but coming from like a minority culture, that mentality of, you know, work is only things that's done with your hands. In my current situation right now, I remember I was speaking to someone, and everybody I speak to, even though I'm in law school, I'm in my first year, they always still quantify it as just being in school, right? So no matter how far you get in academia, no matter how far you're trying to, you know, materialize and gain knowledge in terms of trying to get and not just get a job, but build a career and a profession, people will either identify things as school or identify things as work that are laborious, where you see the fruits of your labor. And I believe what you're saying in terms of the parents speaking life into the children, and that's not, and understanding the ministries and the things that the children will perform. But I do challenge you when it comes to parents raising their children at a certain age, and they see certain traits, and they say, you would make a great lawyer, or you make a great teacher, because they see how you connect with people, how you know, how you speak. You know, you'd make a great nurse because, you know, you're a very caretaking kind of individual. But a lot of times those things don't materialize because what stifles purpose is the irrational behavior that pushes for irregular manifestations. So that idea that, you know, yes, Charles is going to be a lawyer, but because Charles failed the LSAT and did a bad job on the LSAT 2 or 3 times, he's not going to be able to fulfill that anymore, so he should find something else. You know, and I'm just saying that to say that while, yes, we need to fulfill purpose and speak to purpose and make those things come to pass, we have to give room for God to create a level of maturity, you know. Remember, God is a God that's able to use his enemies to strengthen his army, you know, and God allows us to go through various situations that builds us and crafts us so that when we step into that next chapter, we don't fail, you know. He doesn't just say, I know the plans that I have for you and they're plans to prosper. In his saying of that, he knows that in his plans, it's immutable plans. There's no plan B with God. So my plans is, I plan for you to go through that thing. I plan for you to endure this challenge. I plan for you to, face these things because it's going to make you a better practical nurse. It's going to make you a better accountant. It's going to make you an even greater teacher and connect with those students that aren't even in your brain and ontology to consider that you will be speaking life into, and that's why I get what you're saying, but I challenge it in the sense that we do speak life, but we're impatient for the manifestation of the life that we speak.
I hope I understand what you're saying. I'm not, because what I'm saying is that I'm saying parents and children at an early age should know the will of God.
The will of God for the child's life.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to argue about that. I think
Fair.
Across the board. Here's where so that's my point. Here's something that I think you kind of touched on. Was David good at tending sheep? Was he meant to just be a shepherd?
No.
Could David fight off a bear, Goliath, and a lion? Was he meant to just be a warrior? So these are things that come up in his life, and his parents might be like, "Oh, David, you're a great warrior. That's what you're going to be doing. You'll join the army when you're a certain age because you're good at that." Right? So I think we see a lot of that as your children, like you were saying, you're growing up, you see your child as a gift. Oh, that's probably what the will of God is because he's good at that. Or, he really tends the sheep, he really defends them. He's going to be the best shepherd around. You're probably really good at that. Right? That's looking at someone's talents and saying that you think that God has gifted them, so that's what they're going to be doing. But the will of God for David's life was still very different than just what he was talented at. Right? Even though he could play a harp until demons ran out of people, he wasn't just a musician. I'm not saying just a musician because someone's just a musician, but that wasn't the calling for his life.
Right.
The calling was what God said. And the sad thing about David's story is that when Samuel comes to bless, Samuel says to David's parents, "Bring all of your sons." And David was still left. Can you imagine that? Bring all of your children, bring all of your sons, and David's still left. Mom and dad didn't even think he was a son. Mom and dad were so sure that the king was a part of the crew that they brought, that they left their son out there. They had no clue about the will of God for their child. And that's where I'm saying that we're lacking. You looked at him and you said, he's good at this, he's good at that, but he can't be king because you have no clue who your child is. Mind you, he's growing up under your roof. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you should know the will of God for your child. Before you're even thinking of having a baby, are you praying about who that child is? Or is it just being caught up with, I'm going to post the child, we're going to have the gender reveals, we're going to have who's going to be the godfather, all this cute stuff, right? What clothes they're going to wear, all this stuff. You plan, you put the stroller out, you do all this stuff, but do we really take time to get on our knees and just say, you know what, there's a spiritual side of you, you're going to need a connection with God. God, who is this child that I'm bringing to the world? Who are they? And I think we've moved away from that. And it's just about what you're good at. And we send our children off into the world, and we love them. I'm not saying that we're doing a terrible job of parenting. We have amazing, strong people that I'm sitting beside right now. But I think that we moved away from that level of dedication to say, God, I'm giving this child back to you, and who is this child? Where should they go? What doors? Because it helps at the end of the day to know who you are.
I believe what Omar was saying was very accurate and very impactful. And I really hope that, the non-traditional way that we went about this conversation about navigating throughout your academic experience, whatever it may be, I hope you just took nuggets from this, and not just from the sense, like we weren't trying to get through it from a specific place, but we wanted to give a general scope so that everyone can identify with it and really understand that there is a pursuit of purpose that has to happen. There is a real understanding that has to happen where you're not just pursuing a job, but you're pursuing God's will. Because if you're pursuing God's will, then it's you put the currency and the credit on God to fulfill it. And I hope you enjoyed this. This is our 5th episode or 6th episode of Lab, and we can't wait to see you next time.